Hi everyone, Fritz here, and in this video we're going to go over how to install a short shifter on the BMW M235i. But I prefer to start from inside the car and remove the shifter. The reason why is because once we remove this portion of the shifter here, light can come in and that'll help us out from underneath, because once we're underneath the car we have a very limited amount of light. Quickly though, we're just going to take a look at what the shifting looks like in the car first. So with my foot down on the clutch, we're going to see that we have pretty long throws. It's not too bad because the car only has about 30,000 miles on it, so there's not too much play in the shifter itself. So it actually works pretty good, but I want a shorter throw. Just know that the shorter your throw, the more effort that you have to do when you're actually shifting. The first thing that we want to do inside is just remove the shifter. So just go ahead and pull up. And all that stuff may or may not come out. Looks like I'll have to put this back together later. Next here, we're going to remove this rubber boot that is on the shifter. And this basically helps keep the shifter clean. It isolates it from the outside world. So starting out from underneath the car, we're going to have to remove both the heat shield and the water shield here. And once we do that, we're going to have access to take off the clips from the shifter itself. So as you can see here, we've already removed the shift linkage. So the pin is going to be pointing toward the driver's side, and there's a clip that we need to just use a screwdriver to pry it off. Okay, and there in the corner, I'm going to try to highlight it. It's kind of poking out there. That's one of the retaining clips, and again, you're going to have to use a screwdriver just to pry it out. And then there's another one over here, but I can't get my camera in there. We actually have these clips that hold these two in place. You just take a screwdriver, insert it in there, and flick it off. For this joint, you have to move this clip out in order to get access to that hole, which you can push out in order to get that pin. Now you can see that we reinserted our jack into the equation. The reason why is we need to support the transmission, because we are going to remove this transmission mount right here. And the way that's held in place is just 4 bolts, 1 there, 1 across the way, and 2 over there. We're also going to have to remove the hanger for the exhaust. That's not holding the transmission in place, but that is going to lock the mount in place because it is attached, as you can see there. We're going to take that off, and we're going to be replacing that piece as well as that piece. So now we're going to take out the shifter cup. Just take your needle nose pliers and get them in anywhere that you can and twist them. There's actually a groove to it, so just, and then twist it and it'll come out. But we don't need it anymore, so don't worry about taking the cup off of the shifter itself. So the last thing that you need to do before removing the shifter arm is to remove the rear bushing. And it's just held in place by 2 torque screws here and here. So just follow the shifter arm all the way to the rear. You're gonna see this bushing here, and because we're gonna replace it, just unscrew it. If you plan to leave it in place, you could simply just slide out the arm. Now with everything out, let's get to the assembly portion of the short shifter. Taking a look at some of the hardware that we're gonna have for this job, I bought the Turner Motorsports short shifter, as well as the refresh kit for the shifter and the mount for the shifter arm. And that kit comes with sturdier bushings for the shifter arm, the cup for the shifter, and everything that you need for it. Also, the new shifter joint bushing for the shifter arm. In the refresh kit, you also get the locks as well as the pins that hold the shifter in place, and this is going to go in the rear. I also purchased the transmission mounts as well in order to stiffen up the shifting portion of it. That way it takes some of the slop out. You're gonna want C-clip pliers, but you can do it with needle nose. Also a set of Allen wrenches and safety glasses as well, because you're gonna be working underneath the car. You don't want any of this stuff to get underneath your eyes. So here's our stock shifter. compared to the new short shifter. You can see that the pivot point where the ball lies is a lot higher for the new one. And that's what's gonna make the throw shorter. Before we get into the shifter, let's change out the mounts on the transmission. And we'll be exchanging it for polyurethane. And there's actually a groove in the brace where the mounts are supposed to sit. Go ahead and use the included hardware to tighten it down. And spin these on, because when we actually get it onto the transmission, they just slide on. So all we need to do is just tighten this down with our wrench later. Now our new shift joint, we want to put a little bit of lubricant in there, like WD-40 or something, very, very little. Go ahead and lube up the pin as well as inside the circle. Then once we have that, go ahead and put it in, lock in the pin, and then insert the gear selector rod. With the shifter arm, we're going to install the rear bushing first. It's a little bit difficult to get it on here without any lubrication. High heat grease, I'm just gonna go ahead and use that. And I still have some here on the top, so just a little bit, not too much. Then just wipe off some of the extra that you might have here. And you'll notice that this bushing, it's a little uneven. You can see that this one side sticks out a little bit more than the other. That's the side that's gonna go in. On the opposite side, the front side, we're actually gonna take off these rubber bushings and put in our new ones. For this, all you do is just take a screwdriver and just pull it through. Just like that. We won't be using them again, so no need to be gentle. Take just a little bit there. That might even be a little bit too much, but we're gonna spread it around both of them, just so that it's easy for us to place them in. Here we go. If it ends up giving you a little bit of trouble, just go ahead and use some pliers just to bring it in place. With the grease there, you shouldn't have to apply too much pressure. It'll just fall in just like that. So if you can imagine that this is the rear, this is the front. The first thing that we want to do is install the shifter joint. This is where we connect the transmission to the selector rod. All that we do is select the rod into this hole, lock the joint to the transmission by this pin on the hole in the top, pass it all the way through, locks in the joint to the transmission. And then this clip is on the end here. We just slide it forward to hold the pin in place, making sure it doesn't fall out while driving. So again, we put in the joint, put in the pin, slide the ring over to hold the pin in place. With the selector joint locked in the transmission, we can go ahead and place in the selector rod, remembering that the free end points to the passenger side. Then go ahead, using this clip, lock it into place. We can then go ahead and secure in the shifter arm. The front portion will be held in by these two pins. One for the passenger side and one for the driver's side. The locking mechanism on the pin here fits into distinctive grooves that you should be able to feel or see when you're inserting them in. They simply go on top and then you just rotate them down. You can still see that there's some grease here. Grease up the pin, slide it into the arm, and then lock it into place. The rear portion of the shifter arm will reuse the torque screws on our new shifter bushing. With the shifter arm completely locked into place, we will then revisit the shifter joint, where we will take our selector rod, follow it all the way to our shifter. The other end of the selector rod will go into the shifter, remember pointing to the passenger side. We will take our other clip that we have here, and it simply just goes on the back side to lock it into place. The new shifter cup we just place inside. Now let's go ahead and assemble the cup. They are different sizes, so just like that. Spring, retaining clip, insert clip will go on top. So now all that we're gonna do is just take our C-clip pliers and lock our shifter in place. making sure that it's in place. We're good. Now that we're fully locked in place, just remember to orientate the shifter so that it's pointing forward. Go ahead and take the bottom portion and lock it in place. It's supposed to really just pinch in between the shifter arm. Now onto these screws, I'm gonna apply a very, very light coat of Loctite, just to make sure it stays in place from all the vibrations. Now, go ahead and install the shifter lever. And you will tighten it down with your hex heads. Now that our shifter is in, we're gonna go put on our boot. Here we are. Boot is in. Boom. Wow. And just like that, your short shifter is now installed. And I absolutely love it. If you're on the fence of getting a short shifter, I highly recommend that you do it. Just remember that with the shorter throw comes more effort. So if you don't like putting in that extra force when you're shifting, this might not be the mod for you. But if you want shorter throws, don't mind putting a little bit more effort, I highly recommend it. I'll leave a link for this specific one as well as the refresh kit down below. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.